All right. Looks like we're recording, and I am very excited to have on the program Alexandra Paul, who has become a friend of mine. And most of you will know Alexandra as an animal rescuer on this channel. Alexandra is also famous for being an actress, a Hollywood actress, and most famous in that world for starring in Baywatch, which is not a show that I watched growing up, so I'm not as familiar with that. But that's just a really cool side note about your history. And well, really not a side note. I mean, if you look up Alexandra Paul, you're going to read about her acting. And then, like on the Wikipedia page, activism's down below. But activism has really become kind of a core part of your life and really has always been. Is that right, Alexandra? Well, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. It's so nice to see you.
You as well. You as well. And I feel like every time that we've been in the same place, which is not many times, there's always been like a real serious task at hand. And so we haven't really actually had a chance to really like slow down and chat. And so this will be interesting for me. I'll get to learn more about you. Um, so why don't we start at the very beginning, like most interviews go, and you just take me back to like how activism got started. And I do want to ask you some about like Hollywood lifestyle and stuff like that too, but we'll save that for later. Let's start with how this all got started for you.
Oh gosh, I'm almost 62, so it's a long history. I don't want to take up too much of the time, but um, I grew up with a Republican father and a Democratic mother. So I was probably aware of politics. They weren't politically active, so to speak, but they voted. So there was always that discussion in the household.
Yeah.
My mother was active, however. She gave blood regularly. She recycled. We had fresh air kids come into our home in the summer, and she volunteered. So there was always that. So I remember when I moved to LA when I was 18, I was so surprised that people didn't volunteer. Like to me, it was such a big part of um, like what I thought people did. And that was sort of naive because my mother didn't work for one thing when
Hmm.
she was raising us. So she had more time. And then as an actor, you also have more time. And in high school, I stumped for John Anderson, who was a candidate from Colorado, I think, presidential candidate in 1980, who was for solar power. And, so I was already and I wore a button in high school that said, lab animals never have a nice day. So I was already aware of sort of I would call it volunteering. I went to
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
first protest. It was in Battery Park in New York City. My dad took me. It was against nuclear weapons, nuclear war.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. I know you've been in a documentary too about electric cars. So your activism is not solely animal focused. You're very much about the environment and all sorts of causes as well, way beyond animal rights. But I've gotten to know you as an animal rescuer. You've done some of these bold animal rescues. You've gone on trial for rescuing chickens from a foster farm slaughter truck and got acquitted. Really incredible experience. The time when I got to know you was during the Sonoma trial when you were a witness for Wayne on that during that trial, and so that's when we first got to know each other. But why animal rights? Why did you get started with that? Like, what was it about animals that really drew you and made you? It really has become the core focus, I would say.
Yes. Well, right now, I would say I'm when I turned 50, I sort of went, I've got another, maybe I'm through half my life being optimistic. What are my priorities for the second half? And it was helping animals and humans. And to be more specific, it was animal open rescue, and also dealing with the what I believe is a very serious issue, which is human overpopulation, which hopefully we can get into later.
Hmm.
So those
Hmm.
are the two issues that I focus on right now. But throughout my life, I have focused on, environmental issues from the beginning. I grew up in the country, so it really mattered to me. I grew up in the 70s when the environment was a big deal. People were
Hmm.
just recognizing that we were damaging the environment, and that we needed to change our ways. And that has So that's why I got involved with electric cars. And then, of course, the peace movement. I have been arrested a lot and used to protest and vigil for peace and against nuclear weapons throughout my 20s and into my 30s. So I think they're all connected, but animals came about specifically because, well, I loved animals, but also I read a book called Animal Liberation by Peter Singer when I was a sophomore in high school, and I wrote a paper on it. And I became a vegetarian. I had already been a vegetarian because I read a book by Francis Moore Lepay when I was 14 called Diet for a Small Planet. And that talked about the environmental effects of eating meat. And she advocated for eggs a lot in that. But so I stopped eating meat. And then when I read Animal Liberation, I became aware of the animal side of our diet. And it wasn't until I was 49 that I actually became a full vegan, but I gave up wearing animals in my 20s, using anything tested on animals in my teens and 20s. And it was just some dairy and eggs that I kept in until also you can talk to me about that until, for 33 years. And it was, I have to say, my biggest regret in life probably is that I didn't change earlier. My younger brother, Jonathan, he became a vegan when he was 16. So, or maybe 15. So I was 17 then. I'd been vegetarian, but I was not vegan. So he was an influence in that I became aware of the issues, but I didn't change because when your little brother is telling you what to do, you don't necessarily listen.
Right, right. And we were talking before we started recording a little bit about Jonathan. I mentioned that I keep reading about Jonathan in all these books. He is someone who was freeing animals with the ALF. He is a very impressive person in my view, because one thing, I'm reading Green is the New Red because of the new Will Potter book that just came out the other day. Wanted to catch up on his writing. And I've read about Jonathan before, but it just always strikes me that, he's describing situations where people are feeling the weight of the government coming down on them. And a lot of people start turning on each other. They start cutting deals for each other. And in the case of Jonathan, he defied a grand jury, ended up doing prison time for that, for refusing to cooperate, which I think is just so laudable, especially when you see a lot of other people doing this sort of thing. And you mentioned that you didn't actually know the extent of what Jonathan was doing because he's not someone who talks a lot about it. And of course, as someone who was, doing ALF actions, like, you don't talk about that. So I'm really interested in your brother and your sister and your family life, because you all have this incredible, like, integrity. It's amazing. Your sister Caroline is a firefighter and also took part in DXC rescues and all that sort of stuff. And what is it about the Pauls that, did it all stem from your mother, or what is it? It's an amazing family you have.
Oh, well, may I just give my brother props because he doesn't like to talk about himself. He'll be pissed off that I'm talking about him now, but hopefully I won't tell him.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. Jonathan, she said you don't do interviews and stuff, but come on my program if you want to. But I respect that. I respect that. That's actually pretty cool. In fact, I just had Peter Young on my podcast just the other day, and Peter was mentioning that he's planning on writing a book, kind of talking about how we should be able to do activism without the idea that we can talk about it one day. There shouldn't have to be like this social capital that we gain from the activism that we do. So Jonathan, I mean, just like incredible, like I said, integrity is the word that I would use for it. But anyway, I cut you off. You were talking about him.
Yeah, I would use integrity for him also. So just to clarify for folks who aren't familiar with what Green is the New Red is about, it is about a crackdown that the United States federal government did on animal and environmental activists in 2006 from actions that they had done in the 90s. And in terms of my brother's, and these were like 12 activists to 15 activists who'd been involved in various animal liberations, uh, also arson of buildings and of animal torture. And also, I think there was a ski area that was being built in cougar country that was also some poles, or there was some destruction of stuff.
Hmm.
And my brother was specifically involved in the burning of a slaughterhouse, a horse slaughterhouse in Redmond, Oregon. And this slaughterhouse was reviled by the town, but they couldn't stop. They hated it because the slaughterhouse the blood and the hair from the horses would block up the sewage system, and it smelled bad. And so no one was sorry except for the people who made money off this slaughterhouse, that slaughterhouse was gone. My brother was arrested 8 years later because another activist talked. And if no one had talked, if people had refused to talk and just said no, then nothing would have happened. But it's because one person talked and then another person talked because of pressure by the government. And they threaten you. I mean, my brother was threatened with 60 years and he still would not talk. He would not talk about what other people had done. He would only talk about what he had done, and he refused to implicate anybody else or talk about anybody else. And that is why he got a 4-year, 2-month sentence, of which he served 3 years, I think 8 months, because in the federal system, you don't get as much taken off for good behavior. So,
Oh, okay. Thanks for clarifying, because I forgot that he had done that amount of time. I was thinking about the grand jury. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he also did defy the grand jury. That was probably that was in 1993. That was in 1993. That was another case where he refused to talk. And I can't even remember what that was about, because he was brought in. This is what I'm talking about, was 2006. But in 1993, he was brought before a grand jury, and he told them, "I'm sorry, I can't speak about anybody else. You can ask me about me, but I'm sorry, I won't talk about anybody." So they threw him in jail for defying the grand jury, and he stayed there for 8 months, 6 months. And then you're not allowed to keep anybody who defies a grand jury as punishment. You can only put them in there for pressure to talk. And since it was clear he was never going to talk, they needed to release them. They didn't right away. My sister and I was on Baywatch at the time, and we did a People magazine article. And the day that People magazine article came out, my brother was released.
Wow.
So sometimes the media can be a powerful force for good.
For you personally, what was that like to sort of stick your neck out there? Obviously, it's family, so I know like it probably wasn't even a second thought for you. But did you get pressure, professionally or anything like that, or were like your colleagues in the acting world generally supportive?
Well, in terms of my brother, in terms of activism as a whole, I feel like my activism has not affected my career. There was one time after I'd been arrested for something, I think it was maybe protesting the Iraq War, and I spent some time in jail, just 5 days. And a producer who hired me to do a TV movie in Canada was really worried that I wouldn't be allowed in Canada. And so I had to hire a lawyer to protect me. So he was confident that I would be able to get into Canada. But that was the only. And I remember once I put during the Iraq War too, actually, some friends and I made a peace sign that we put in the Hollywood sign, in one of the O's of the Hollywood sign, because back then it was 1990. I'm sorry, it wasn't the Iraq War. It was the Persian Gulf War in 1991,
Okay. Yeah.
1990. So 9/11 hadn't happened, and so the Hollywood sign was not as highly protected as it is now. But so we made this huge, with sheets, this huge peace sign, which we put in the O of Hollywood, and one of the O's, I can't remember which one. And as we got caught by the Rangers, we were coming down, and the Ranger said, I will arrest you right now if you don't take that sign down.
Hmm.
And I had to go to work on an acting job the next day, and I knew that I couldn't be arrested. So I let them, so I went back up with my friends and we took it down. And I'm sure
Oh,
to be arrested either. But see, so sometimes there are constraints of having a job. And
right, right.
that's
Were
why,
you?
that's why
I mean, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think that because of my, the fact that I am out of work a lot as an actor, and I'm also a white woman, American, that protects me a lot. Makes me feel
Yeah.
more confident that the judicial system will be fair to me, which is why I am more what they would call fringe in my activism.
And more willing, I guess, to put yourself out there and to even stand trial, which I know is a calculated risk that you take. Um, what were you always this way? Like, were you always sort of like mischievous, like when you were little, when it came to rules that you thought weren't fair, weren't just?
I'm so earnest. It's so boring. I am earnest. That is probably it. I remember that in high school, I mean, like we boycotted lettuce for Cesar Chavez and the farm workers and my mom, and then we didn't buy tuna because of the dolphin bycatch when you caught tuna in the 70s. So I
Yeah.
was, I did that with my mom. We didn't buy grapes because of the farm workers, but yeah, I wasn't, yeah, I guess I was. I mean, but I wasn't mischievous. I was earnest and very serious and took myself incredibly seriously. I'm much lighter now and don't take
Mhm.
myself as seriously. But I remember I remember my French class, and I was very good in French because I was bilingual. Actually, we'd lived in France as a child, so I was bilingual. So the French teacher wanted to give us a test, but she said, "I'm going to make this test really easy because." Uh, so don't even worry about it. And I was so mad. I thought it was, and it was right before it was for colleges, they looked at it was my senior year. And I felt that that was not honest, that we were going to have a super easy test. And I refused to take the test. So I got a 0 for the class because I refused, because I said, and of course, that brought down my average so much. And I was, of course, very, very good in French, right? Because I was bilingual. So anyway, that was kind of probably stupid, but
Well, that answers my question. Then yes, you're very similar to how you were when you were a child, I guess. That's
oh
awesome.
my
I like how
God.
you bring up, like being a white woman, having like a status in society that offers us a lot of privilege, and how you've used that privilege in a way to speak up for others and try to give a voice to the voiceless, like the animals, like you do. I really appreciate that because I think a lot of people like feel like ashamed of like having a certain level of privilege, and it should be used. Like if you have it, like there are people who would be so grateful to have some of that status to where they felt like they could go to a protest or stand trial and feel like maybe I'll get a more fair shake than the next person. And
I feel a little guilty about my privilege. I don't know if the word is guilty, but I feel aware of it.
mhm,
Like you said. And I also, because I am very much I always felt that Caroline and Jonathan, my siblings, were stronger uh, mentally than I somehow, that they weren't easily influenced.
hmm,
I tend to have a people pleasing personality. And so I remember when I was like 12 or 13, I was really worried that I would have been a good German in Germany at the time of
ooh,
Hitler, because I
yeah,
would have been influenced by the people around me. And I really have always kept that in my mind. Like, you have to really work to keep your values and clear, because it's so easy to be brainwashed. And
right.
that fear of not of being a good German, uh, and when I say good, I mean in quotes, good German, but uh,
Hmm. Hmm. I know what you mean.
has kept me maybe more radical than I would have been. More,
Yeah.
yeah, because the
Well,
causes I picked, animal rights and human overpopulation, are not issues that are popular. It's not like
right.
you're looking for children who have cancer.
Right.
In fact, when my friends do these runs to raise money for cancer research, I say, I'm sorry, I can't, because that money goes to researching on animals, and I can't support that.
Yeah. Well, it is sort of exactly what you're expressing, which is one of the things that I was really concerned about. And this was before I went vegan. Like thinking about, would I have been the kind of person during slavery or the Holocaust to stand by? And I now draw that parallel to animal rights. And so I know that's going to offend some people, but I don't care, because it's just that way. Like if you were there at the time and it was just normalized and everybody was doing it, and to stick your neck out and be against that was the unpopular position. That's what we're doing to animals. So you can really kind of gauge where you would have stood on historical issues by what you were doing to animals right now. And I hope people take that as like a warning. I hope that anybody who's watching this who has not like taken the step to stop exploiting animals will see that as like, oh, this is my wake-up call. In history, I could have been that person. Like, who wants to be that person that stood by for? Nobody would say like I would stand by during the Holocaust or slavery. So yeah, I like that you bring that up.
I'm not the only person who has that. Thank you for sharing that, Jeremy. I wonder though, sometimes I wonder, like, what is going on now that I didn't realize is going on, and I didn't act in a way in 20 years that we'd look back on. And yeah, because I think in 20 years, people will look back on factory farming and say, oh my God, I can't believe we treated animals like that for 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was just in the comment section of some video where somebody had like talked about Hitler being like for animal rights, and I wrote in there, you realize like he was inspired by the meat industry in Chicago, and that's how he like devised his plan and everything. It was like looking at that assembly line style of processing animals, which is what he decided to do to the Jews. And yeah, like I feel the same way. Like we will look back at this as like one of the most grotesque things, if not the most grotesque thing that we've ever done as a species. I just had a conversation with Alka from PETA, who was talking about, these baboons that are having, animal testing done on them for the xenotransplantation, where it's like you're taking an organ from someone to give to someone else who is, unhealthy, possibly because they were eating animals their whole life, and to extend their life, talking about human overpopulation, to extend their life so they can continue to exploit. So we'll get to the human overpopulation, but I do want to talk about Mountaire. We should talk about Mountaire, because that was a major investigation that came out fairly recently. It was published in Vox, VOX, not Fox. Kenny Torella did a great story about this investigation that you took part in, and this rescue of chickens. What can you tell me about that one? Because it was extremely impressive, and you were taking on someone who was like one of the prime donors of Republican causes, including Trump, which is, it sounds like, could have been a scary thing, but you took it on.
So I was part of a team, and I was invited onto the team after Mountaire. It was decided to focus on Mountaire. The reason Mountaire was targeted was because exactly what you said, is the owner of Mountaire is Ron Cameron, and he's one of the first big donors to Trump in 2015, before his 16, before his presidential run, his first presidential run. He kind of soured on Trump for a while after, and didn't support him after, but like the Kochs didn't either. So, but then when Trump became the presidential candidate in 2024, he supported him. So, again, because and
I think he was a Nikki Haley fan. I think he donated to Nikki Haley at one point.
Nikki Haley. He's given a lot of money to the Koch brothers.
Mm,
and their foundations and things, which support a lot of very conservative policies and such,
mhm,
and politicians. Um, Mountaire also profited because during COVID, Trump had a policy, wanted to speed up the chicken lines, or actually, I should say, the chicken facility owners wanted to speed up the chicken lines, and Trump okayed it. And so there were certain facilities, I don't like to say farms, but sometimes they're not farms. They're
mhm.
terrible, terrible places. They're facilities, they're factories. And in this case, slaughterhouses, the lines went up to 175 birds per minute that the slaughterhouse workers had to slaughter, which is incredibly fast, which means that slaughterhouse workers get injured, slaughterhouse workers get, it's terrible stress. And then also the animals are not killed with properly. And so there's more suffering for them. So anyway, Mountaire definitely profited from Ron Cameron's donations to Trump, which we see on both sides. So it's not a
Right.
Republican Democrat thing right there.
It's not.
Right. But he does have a lot of farms on the East Coast. Shoot, I said farms. He says a lot of chicken facilities on the East Coast, and they slaughter a lot of chickens. And so we documented really horrendous conditions in quite a few of their farms on the East Coast, and rescued 3 of their chickens from there who were very, very sick. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
that was a campaign that I was proud to be involved with.
Another aspect of that is just that Ron Cameron is a fairly secretive person. So not a lot of people know about Mountaire, even though it's this massive corporation, this massive company. Um, I don't remember. I should have looked this up before I started the interview, but can you remind me, are they like the top 3 chicken produce?
You know
I
what?
shouldn't. Yeah.
I can't remember either. If it is, it
Yeah.
would be 4, I think, at least. But
Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
can't remember. Maybe
I mean,
while
there
if
there's
I'm
obviously.
going on, you can look it up while I'm
Okay. If I get bored, if you
That's
start
right.
being too earnest, I'll do that. You so I mean, there's obviously like Tyson and Purdue, and
Yeah.
so we know of those companies who are bigger, I would say, like well, without question. But yeah, he's a major player in politics, and I mean, so a lot of people would be interested to know um, who's funding all this stuff, and a lot of it's coming from the chicken industry and this guy, um, who are basically. And here's another little tidbit, and I remember this from years and years and years ago, but I'm reminded of it from the Green is the New Red. Is this group called ALEC?
Oh,
Who basically writes all the laws for the lawmakers. You pay to play, you get to sit down there, and then the lobbyists write the law. I'm sure this is not news to everybody, but the lobbyists write the law, then the lawmakers, pass it. They're all like ALEC members, and I had forgotten about that. The name, that name hasn't been in the news as much lately, but anyway, that's one of them.
no, well, it's another group that's very secretive.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it's like, it's known, people know about that. Okay, well, so the Mountaire investigation was incredible. I'm going to link down below, so please, go and check out that great story. And kudos to Kenny Torella and Vox for their focus on factory farm issues, which they're one of the few publications that has a real uh, focus on it, which I appreciate, and what we need a lot more of. Um, so let me just go back personally to when I just started to see you, which was during the Sonoma trial. And one of my tasks was to go through a lot of evidence and stuff. And so I ended up watching tons of footage of this massive demonstration. It was several, and I'm going to blank on which one was which, but massive number of activists who was there in Sonoma County to rescue animals and do this big demonstration. And what stood out to me about watching you in particular was you had this like, and it goes back, I think, to your childhood and, like your all your years of activism. You had this kind of like a defiance, but like an upbeat attitude. You were singing, of course, a lot of people were singing, but you present to the authorities such a peace-loving person that is really hard for them to caricature. And I just thought that was fairly interesting as as animal rights activists get maligned in a certain way. And there's Alexandra with a flower and holding an animal. And it's just, yeah. So could you tell me a little bit about that experience? And I know you've had so many that some of this might all, blend together in your mind, but it was that, I'm sure that one was fairly memorable for you.
Well, I think the footage you watched was of the Reichardt Duck Farm mass protest and rescue, right? And then
Yeah.
also Sunrise Chicken Farm. But
Mm.
Sunrise was first, and it was basically 300 activists, hundreds of
Yeah, I think
activists,
500. Yeah.
500 walking onto a farm, carrying flowers, putting on hazmat suits, and making sure that our biosecurity was really, really good, and going into the barns and rescuing chickens whom we saw were in distress, which is pretty much every one of them, but we couldn't take every one of them. And
Hmm.
I had the honor of rescuing a chicken. And, in terms of like peaceful, I've been trained as a peace. My first arrests were in my early 20s as a peace activist. I was trained as a peace activist. So to me, it's so important to be nonviolent and peaceful, because if you have aggression, it's about you and your feelings. And it
Mm.
doesn't help the animals or the cause for which you're advocating. It's so important not to lose your cool and to be respectful of the cops who are just doing their job like you're doing your job. And it
Mhm.
is vital, especially in terms of optics. And Wayne would echo what I'm saying, because that is a really important credo of his when he founded DXE and of a lot of folks at DXE, certainly the core leaders of DXE. So when
Mhm.
I see activists cry hysterically and angrily, or yell at cops, or I find that amateurish. That is not
Mm.
helpful. And I think it's really important to make it about the animals, and your emotions do not help them.
Yeah.
So, having said that, so Sunrise was a great experience. Then I was able to rescue a chicken along with a lot of other people rescuing chickens.
Mhm.
And then we did a civil disobedience. So we were arrested, and I don't think we spent much time in jail, though. I think we were
Mm.
released quite quickly. Reichardt, the duck farm, I was arrested. I was actually the first person arrested on that then, and it wasn't strictly that. I was supposed to be the negotiator,
Mm.
and I got arrested like that. So Wayne had to take over. He was trying to pass the baton to me. I was like, Wayne, I could never be as good at, the interlocutor, whatever the middle person
Interlocutor. Yeah, 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 right.
between both groups, the police and the activists. Um, and he's like, no, 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 I want you to do it. And I got arrested. He had to take over. Probably a good thing ultimately. So yeah, we ended up spending 2 or 3 days in jail for that.
Oh, okay.
And, uh, and the charges, now I believe in no bail, jail, no bail. That I think that we shouldn't be bailed out, and it's a waste of money, and we should stay in. And both those situations we were bailed out, and I think that was that's a mistake.
I see. Okay. Well, it's funny now that you're talking about, how you were trained as a like in all this peaceful stuff. I think it's interesting. So Bob Weiner, the prosecutor during Wayne's trial, where you were a witness, chose you, chose you as the person to go after, to get a concession that all these people coming onto the farm could have been intimidating
Oh,
to the
yes.
farmer. Remember
You know
that?
what? It's funny, and I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't, and then I remember Wayne came back when he re-examined me and said, tell me who the people were. And I was like, well, I didn't understand what he was getting at, but what he was getting at was to try and show me, try and get me to say that they were like old people. And I said they
Oh,
were
right.
diverse people because, that's important to me. Like there's diverse, young, old, black, white, but I wasn't thinking like there was some people in wheelchairs, some people with puppies in their hands,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
holding flowers and peace signs. So I didn't get that at all. I
I
don't know
thought
how good a witness I was in terms of that, but
I thought you were great, but now, like, having seen the outcome where, Wayne was convicted and did like more than 30 days in jail, I to me, it's amazing because I saw that as him badgering you. I thought that looked terrible. I thought you were portraying, a very peaceful, uh, you know, aura, I guess, for lack of a better word, to the jury. And here was Bob Wayner, like, sort of like pressing you hard on this, and you were, just very friendly. It's funny to me, like Wayne and I discussed you one time when we were talking about like, yeah, like Alexandra is so nice that even someone like Bob Wayner, she would be like, okay, yeah, yeah, maybe he's maybe he
oh,
was intimidated or something,
oh. You know what I kept thinking? Like, why isn't the jury pissed off that he has me on the stand for so long? I was
Mm,
seemingly on for way too long in terms of what I could offer.
mhm.
And I would have thought they'd be like, why are you wasting our time? That's
Right.
what I thought. Like this gentleman kept, yeah, asking me stupid questions,
Yeah.
relevant
And
questions.
right. And so much of what was asked during that trial, and I have like a real cynical view of the legal system now, as I'm sure you do, and I'm sure a lot of people do. I don't know. I shouldn't speak for you, but it was like you couldn't talk about your past in a way that was like I'm pretty sure we couldn't mention that you were someone who had rescued animals and been acquitted, which would be relevant, I would think, to a jury, but according to this court. It just none of that was relevant. And maybe we should talk about that now. All your acquittal happened before I knew you, so I had no involvement or anything like that. I just saw that through social media, like the rest of everybody, and it was very inspiring. It was really a special moment. I especially really liked the post of the video when the verdict was read, and the being able to see you guys give each other hugs and congratulations, and that must have been quite a moment. But tell me a little bit about that experience, because since I wasn't there.
So the rescue of two chickens from a foster farm slaughterhouse truck took place when there was an action at a foster farm slaughterhouse. And Alicia Santurio and I, basically, the entrance to the slaughterhouse was blocked by activists who had basically, chained themselves down.
Mhm.
And so the trucks couldn't pass. So we drove a car up and removed. There was one chicken truck there, and we opened the back and removed two chickens who were sick. Well, all of them are sick, but two
Yeah.
chickens, and took them to medical care. And that was that. And there's a video of it, and which was posted the next day, and with my name and Alicia's name. And we, as activists, who this was an open rescue, we were open about it.
Mhm.
It's a challenge to the corporations to say, come and prosecute us, and we will show you that we are right, because we know that you just want to hide everything. And so
Mm.
if you go to court, you're going to have to talk about your company and how it's run, how you treat animals. So most of the time, companies don't want to come after us because they don't want their operations uncovered.
Mhm.
And this was I found it I found it sort of, I was embarrassed a little bit about the fact that I was on trial for this after doing rescues that had taken, weeks and months of planning. But yet, just about 6 months after that action, I got something in the mail that said, you are being charged with theft. And I thought, oh, okay. I guess dropped is what I thought. This will be dropped, unfortunately. But I called Wayne because I wanted him to represent me. And he said yes. And I was thrilled. I've learned that as an activist, you have to have an activist or an activist lawyer specifically represent you. You
Right.
can't have a great criminal lawyer, because when I don't know, when was I? Oh, I guess it was the peace thing. It wasn't the electric car, but I was in court and I'd hired a criminal lawyer and to defend me. But I told him, you don't defend me. At the peace people, when we go to court, we just say we did it and we'll take what you give us. I trespassed into federal property was what I did to protest the Iraq war. So I went into a courthouse and with a Catholic worker chaplain. And so that's what we do. So I told this criminal lawyer that I'd hired, like, you just don't argue. Whatever the prosecutor wants to give me, you say you don't argue. And when I walked into court that morning, he was sweating. And I said, John, are you okay? He goes, I've never had a client tell me not to try and get the best deal for them. What he didn't understand is that going to court is part of our protest. And until we all go to court and all fight the laws won't change. So if we keep trying to get out of them, slink out of them, then nothing's going to change.
Right.
So anyway, that's my philosophy. And
yeah, this is years back. Now I'm seeing a very positive sign in the animal rights movement where people, like, I don't know if this is naive of me, but it seems to me that people are cooperating much better in the last year or so. But there was a time period when
much better
in like differing forms of like philosophies of like, this style of activism works better. No, this style of activism works better. Now it seems to be like, I don't know, maybe I'm misreading it, but I see a lot of people who have differing styles of activism coming together. We saw that in DC, for instance, like that was a great coming together. But there was a time period.
By the way, I mean, different styles are great. You should go to the style that works for you. Like, I am not somebody who could do speak outs or is confrontational or who will run on a field and hold a banner. Those are not the things that I'm interested. I'm interested in undercover work. I'm happy to hold a sign on a street corner and be in a vigil, but I don't do those more, what's the word? More media friendly things. That's not my style, but good for the other people who do them.
Yeah, well, where I was going with that was I remember having like sort of like an internal debate with somebody about like pressure campaigns versus this. And it's always been my view that what you're doing is a pressure campaign of the legal system. And so like I like that you said that the trial is almost the point, or it's not the whole point, but it's a big part of it. So to me, that's like an intense pressure campaign squarely focused right on the legal system.
And DNC always believed that, because that's why, we believe that we need to change the laws. Specifically, the necessity defense should be able to be applied to animals who aren't just dogs or humans.
Right.
They should be able to apply to any sentient being.
Yeah.
And that's why going to court is so important. It won't change unless we do that.
And we keep trying. And unfortunately, Zoe Rosenberg, who's going on trial soon for rescuing chickens, just was denied the necessity defense in her trial. So she's going to go to trial now with her hands tied, as so often activists do. And yet there are still instances where you can sway a jury. And I'm wondering, like, I don't know if you know this or if you can say this, but in the case of the rescue from the Foster Farm slaughter truck. What do you think it was that swayed the jury to acquit?
Well, firstly, I was surprised that Foster Farms decided to go to trial. And the reason that they did, they offered us 5 deals before we went to trial, each more sweet than the last. But we said no, we wanted to go to trial. And they thought they had a shoe-in because they had the video of us removing the chickens. And they put their least experienced, most ineffective prosecutor on our case for the first 2 days. And after the second day, they brought in a felony prosecutor, criminal prosecutor, because they realized that they had a steep hill to climb to try and win this case. They were overly confident because of the video. And, you know, I had Wayne, Alicia was represented by Chris Caraway. And then each of them had an assistant or two. And we had an entire courtroom of activists supporting us. So they underestimated us. The reason that I think, so what was so interesting and surprised me when we were in voir dire, which is when you are picking the jury, was how angry the jurors were for being there. And they were, and about the fact that this case was being tried. And it wasn't because they were angry at us. They were angry at the county or the prosecutor's office or the chicken farm, Foster Farms, because they thought, why are you bringing to trial 2 women who took 2 chickens? One woman said, I work at Walmart and we don't even pay attention to people who shoplift if it's under $40. And he was so angry. This was all in the voir dire. They stood up and they said, why are we here? And that was really interesting. And then as the trial went on, basically, you know, this was not about a trial about whether we had taken chickens, because we had removed the chickens. It was about why. But really the jury had to look at whether we believed that what we were doing was right. That was really why we were acquitted, because it wasn't about, oh, we think, I mean, partly it was, but legally it was that we showed that we believed we had the law on our side, and we had things that, papers and things that we had read that showed that we believe, you know, that we can remove sick chickens. And they believed us, which of course, because it was true. And as the judge said at the end, when he was dismissing the jury, he said, I know you were upset when you first came into this room because you thought this was a case about 2 women stealing chickens. And now I think you realize that it was about much more.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an incredible statement. I'm surprised I haven't heard that before.
I know. And another great thing he also was that we insisted on calling the chickens by their names, Ethan and Jax. And eventually the prosecution also called them Ethan and Jax.
The same thing happened in North Carolina. That happened in North Carolina too, where even the prosecutor starting to call the goat Rain. That was amazing.
Right. Yeah. So now Alicia was acquitted, right? I think she, after I heard the backroom stuff, what happened, we interviewed as like a few of the jurors. We'd like to interview as many as we can, but only a few are usually open to it. And apparently all the jurors wanted to acquit Alicia right away. One of them was holding out against me, and I think it was something to do with, I can't remember, but in the end,
they came around.
Yeah, they came around. It was something about the protest. I don't remember what it was exactly, but yeah. So there was discussion, and I don't remember how many days it was. Maybe 1 or 2 days that they deliberated. I don't think it wasn't long.
You must have felt pretty good having heard the judge say that. So when you went, you know, when you found out there is a verdict, I'm sure there's some nerves when you're going into that situation, but did you feel pretty confident?
I didn't care whether we won or lost. I just felt based on it wasn't going to change. So if we won, so that looks good optically because the animal rights activists won. But legally, we did not move the needle forward because it was still about the humans. It was about whether the humans had done something illegal. It wasn't about whether the chickens were being treated properly and had a right to be free. And so, unfortunately, because we weren't able to get those kind of defenses in, we tried and we almost got the necessity defense in, by the way.
Wow.
But we switched judges, and I think the first judge might have let us, but then he was called into children's court or something, which he had to do once a month. So another judge came in. So for me, serving time for animals doesn't scare me or anything. And I was either way. Of course, I wanted to win for the optics for the animal rights movement, but also you can also make hay if you go to jail too. So
yeah,
either
right.
way. So I wasn't nervous. I was actually surprised. Well, I don't know if I was surprised. I wasn't surprised. But as I said, I had no expectations and I really wasn't nervous at all.
California, in and for the county of Merced, the people of the state of California, plaintiff versus Alexandra Paul, defendant. Case number 22CR01899A, count 1, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Alexandra Paul, not guilty of
Quiet.
The people of the state of California, plaintiff versus Alicia Santorio, defendant. Case number 22CR01899B, count 1, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Alicia Santoro, not guilty of the crime of petty theft and misdemeanor. Signed by juror number 3530 in seat number 1.
Right. Madam Foreperson, that the verdict of the jury? Okay. Any party which has the jury poll?
No.
Defense wish to have the jury poll? All right.
Do you know how much?
An amazing job, by the way. Wayne is
Yeah.
like, I will always want him to defend me.
Yeah, he is incredible. A very on the ball person, very sensitive. It's funny because like he can be quite he's tough. I mean, he's a tough guy, but he really takes into account a lot of different things, especially like he just really comes alive in a trial. Like that to me, and I've known Wayne now for a few years, and I've seen Wayne sort of like in peaks and valleys, I would say, like where he'll tell me all the time, I don't feel as effective. I don't like he's always doing something amazing. But yeah, he just flourishes in these trials like that you can see almost like a joy, as he's taking on.
That's
Right.
why I think I say to all activists, you have to hire an animal activist lawyer.
Right.
Activist, but animal activist lawyer is even better if you are arrested and go to court for some animal advocacy.
Right. Because as you kind of pointed out, like if you have some other attorney, they're trying to get you the best deal. And that's for you. You're not thinking about you in the trial. And that's like you said, it blows their mind. It's hard for them to wrap their head around. Oh, you don't want me to get you a good deal? No, we want this to go all the way and get the chickens their day in court.
Exactly. And like for the peace movement, I mean, that was, I could have not gone to trial and paid $25. That was the fee I had to pay and I wouldn't pay it. Maybe it was $50. It was something like that. And because then I would just be giving $50, $25 to the government that I'm protesting. That's
right.
That's not the point of it. So I think it's really important for people to be clear, about what their end game is. And for animals, when it comes to the animal stuff, it's not about us humans. And I'm hoping that a trial will come about where actually it will be about the animals and not about the humans who are rescuing them. I was so pleased when I was sitting at the defense table, and I have a picture of it actually. And there's the judge, there's Wayne, there's Chris, there's 2 assistants on our side, and then there's 2 prosecutors from the other side, all huddling up in front of the judge, all in their suits, talking about chickens. I just loved it. I
Yeah.
thought, wow, okay, this is good.
Yeah. So I feel like you kind of already answered this question, but I still want to ask it just in case you want to elaborate a little more. Just like because of your background being an actress, and a very, I would say, I don't really understand how Hollywood works all that well, but at least according to Wikipedia, you've been in over 100 films and TV shows. So you've had a very illustrious Hollywood career. You could really sit in the lap of luxury, I imagine, if you wanted to choose that sort of lifestyle. Instead, you've chosen to dedicate your efforts to animals and stuff, and like you said, be willing to go to jail, sit in a jail cell when you could be sitting in a nice home, maybe by a swimming pool. I'm just imagining I've never been to Hollywood, by the way, and I know you don't live in Hollywood, but you could, right? So anyway, that you get my question, right? Like why do all this when you could sit by a pool? And also I want to ask this further, just like that seems to be unusual for people who are in that position, or am I wrong about that? Or are there a lot of people that do choose to use their position in the acting world for that purpose, like or the purpose that they care about?
Firstly, I always say that acting makes me happy, but activism feeds my soul. So it's that my life would be not as rich and deep and full if I wasn't following my passion to make the world a better place. And as for other actors, oh my gosh, there's so many wonderful people who are committed to different causes and do lend their name to different things, different issues, and work hard at them. Yes, definitely. Definitely. I've met a lot of them. I met a lot of them because in the 80s, the early 80s, when I was in my 20s and I first came, I was very involved with Jane Fonda and Tom Hayden. They were married at the time. He was a California senator. She was an actress who's also very liberal and active. And they had an organization called Network, which was about pushing, propositions that were, good for California. When I say proposition, I mean legal propositions. And I started my own nonprofit called Young Artists United when I was 23 with a friend, which was for people in the entertainment industry to be a positive influence on young Americans, because it was a time of Nancy Reagan, who was the president, Ronald Reagan's wife. She had a campaign which was just say no to drugs, which is just not helpful to kids going through stuff. And
Yeah.
we were all kids. And so we would travel around the country and talk about things like drugs and sex and depression and eating disorders. And we would talk from our own experience. We would not tell them what to do, except for one thing: don't drive drunk. We would say that. But that was the only thing. We didn't say don't do drugs, don't do this, don't do. We just would share our experiences, and we would raise money for other organizations that help kids. So, and there were so many of us. So I know firsthand from being around activists in Hollywood that there are many, many of them.
Yeah, and there are many in the animal rights world too. Like Joaquin Phoenix obviously comes to mind like instantly. He's the narrator of Earthlings, which is what turned me vegan.
Yeah,
And
James Cromwell has done things that Joaquin
right,
has not. Which is get arrested. Actually, I think Joaquin has gotten arrested. He's gotten arrested for animals, protesting
right.
treatment of animals in, I think it was made in labs at the university, at a university. Good for him. I think James Cromwell, you can see the video. James Cromwell, he just, I think he runs into a meeting at some university and protests. He's done several of those. I remember reading about Ricki Lake, who was a actress and a talk show host, getting arrested for something. I don't remember what, at a protest. But, so there are quite a few actors who, and you don't have to get arrested, by the way, and to be an activist. There are so many ways to be an activist, whether it's donating money or lending your name or writing letters or being out in the street with a sign. So there's many, many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded like I'll see this every now and then. Like DXC will have some sort of campaign, and they'll find some like model or singer or something from another country who's like massive in that country, who will just like collaborate on a reel with them. That also is just like really appreciated, I know, and it's just kind of amazing. I think even Paris Hilton did one recently where she like spoke out in favor of something, and I saw Zoe and DXC like highlighting Paris Hilton for doing that.
Good, good. Yeah. No, very many. I mean, I went to Washington to lobby for women's rights with actors. I went to South Africa to register voters with actors like Samuel Jackson and Danny Glover. So there are a lot of actors who are really passionate and have their heart in the right place.
Yeah. So what did you say? What was the quote again that you gave? You like to say like acting you have fun with, but activism feeds your soul. What was the exact quote?
Acting makes me happy, but
Okay.
activism
Yeah.
feeds my soul. Yeah.
Well, I asked that because you recently posted on your social media that you had just started a short film. So like you're doing acting like to this day. Like is it what can you tell me about that short film?
Actually, it's a short film with a message too. Yeah, I moved out of LA a couple years ago to take care of my mom. So I haven't been able to act in the last several years, but I did do this short film because one of my closest friends wrote it, directed it, produced it, and starred in it. So
Hmm,
he asked me to be in it. It's called redlining. Do you know what redlining is?
I don't.
Redlining is the practice of, well, basically barring people of color from buying a home by either not allowing them at all to buy it or offering them such prohibitive loans that have such
Hmm,
prohibitive uh, interest rates that they can't buy it. So it's also, so that's what the movie is about the redlining that has happened all over the country.
hmm.
It happens still, I'm sure, but it happened a lot sort of in the 70s, 60s, before, and now it has a term, so it's more, um, it's people watch out for it, but it still happens, definitely. And
Yeah.
home, so it's about, so because most of the wealth in America has been wealth that's passed down through the home. So because someone owned a home, they pass it down to their kids. And
Hmm,
so that's where most of the white wealth has come from. But Black wealth has not been able to accumulate that way because of redlining, because Blacks were specifically, intentionally stopped from buying property.
yeah.
So that's what the film is about.
Oh,
And
interesting. That reminded me of a guest I had on this channel, and she's a friend of DXE, Lisa Lapel, who is this woman who came from Germany. And she actually like learned at the age of 9 that her parents were Nazis. And since that time, she rejected that, went into all this human rights stuff and all this. And she had a black husband, moved to America, and tells this story. And I can't remember what year this was in when they moved here. They moved to Florida, I believe, and they ended up with this very predatory, like guy who brought them in basically to this housing estate, and he didn't realize that she had a black husband. And she even describes like when he saw them for the first time, like there was this like look on his face. And then they had to deal with all these like incredibly, it's kind of like you said, like there can be ways where they'll allow you to do it, but then they're going to make your life a living hell. And so they had all this stuff with like the garbage pickup, just all this stuff where they were just like made to feel unwelcome, which they were unwelcome in this like really upscale, I guess, community. Um,
yeah, that's
yeah,
it does happen today. I shouldn't say it maybe happens today. It definitely happens today.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I remember when I shot a bunch of movies where I think I shot a couple movies where I've played lesbians 4 times, but in these 2
Mhm.
movies I played, we're going to play overseas. So what they did was, because it was really a thriller and it was just a side note that I was a lesbian, it wasn't integral to the story, even though I was the lead.
Mhm.
Um, they they in the couple scenes where I was with my lover or partner, I had to reshoot them for Europe with a man.
What?
Isn't that
Really?
funny? Yes, it's funny and terrible. It's
Yeah.
terrible. And I thought that the Europeans were so much more open-minded, and I said that. And they said, "No, if we want to sell it in Europe, you got to be straight."
Wow.
Now this was, by the way, the 1990s, so it's probably changed.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
Well, when it comes to like LGBT rights, it's like it's always 2 steps forward, 3 steps back or whatever. Like I to me what's sad right now is how a lot of people have just accepted and caved on trans issues. Like you
what
did
do
you
you mean
see how like
accepted?
so, like the university the other day, right? I just think this is pathetic that a university, I think it was University of Penn or somebody, basically said, okay, we're not going to allow trans athletes anymore. And we're going to wipe away the records of the trans athlete that was here and broke records. And they did that, of course, from pressure from the Trump administration. And I've even heard people on the left say, yeah, the left got too woke, right? Like,
Oh
what
my
does that
God.
mean? What
Okay,
does that mean?
I
Yeah.
want to say that I am woke. I am
Yeah.
PC. I think woke means that you are awake to other people's perceptions and feelings. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
In terms of trans, I feel like we're gonna have to maybe make a third athletic category,
Yeah.
because I talked to my friend Dotsie, who I used to have a
Mhm.
podcast with, and she's an Olympic cyclist, and she won a silver in London and for the U.S. in oh, I can't remember what year it was, 2000.
She was featured in the Game Changers documentary.
2012. Yes,
Yeah.
she was featured in the Game Changers documentary. She's vegan
Mhm.
and animal activist, has her own organization that fights for around dairy.
Mhm.
And she feels strongly that because born male, transgender female, have a distinct advantage in their musculature uh, in the first years of life after, and I don't know exactly, like, if you don't start taking blockers, if you start taking blockers before you hit puberty, maybe you don't get the advantage. I don't
Mhm.
know if
Mhm.
boys and
Yeah.
girls before they hit puberty are muscularly the same, but
Mhm.
definitely if you're able as a young person to develop in a masculine with masculine gene traits, then can often have an advantage in
Yeah. Yeah.
certain sports. So I,
Well, let me
I remain, like, I try and be open-minded. I want us to have maybe another category. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I
Please.
don't know. So what I
Yeah.
was gonna say is like on that particular issue, there may be some nuance, sure. Like but the broader point that I was making is that I just think it's pathetic that a university is letting the administration tell them what to do. Now, if they had come to that conclusion on
Yeah.
their own, that would be one thing. The other I
Well,
mean,
because the administration is holding some kind of thing over their head saying you won't get
yeah.
money,
Right,
right?
right. And they should fight that. Like you shouldn't cave to that because then it's like, what's the next thing that they're going to hold over your head? And now you have to do the administration's bidding. It's like a real cowardice.
Yeah.
And
But I
I
don't
mean
know. I mean, I read Castor Semenya's book, and she is a runner
mhm,
from somewhere on the continent of Africa. And I apologize that I can't remember what country she's from. But anyway, she is a woman, and she was born a woman. She identifies as a woman, etc. But she has very high testosterone, and I think maybe she had testicles that didn't descend or something. Anyway, she has more testosterone than the average woman,
yeah.
and she was incredibly mistreated, and it was terrible what they did to her. I just don't know the answer. We're
Yeah,
all born differently. Like, should I not be able to compete because I'm 5'10" and somebody else is 5'3" and weighs 200 pounds and I'm 5'10" and
right.
weighs 25? I mean, that's also genetics. So it's a really tough issue.
Yeah,
Like,
it is a tough issue, I think, and I think the takeaway from my perspective, this is just my perspective, is that the government has no business getting involved in that. It's just not their purview. Focus on what you should be doing. And the thing that is like more blatantly discriminatory is like banning trans people from the military. That's obviously just blatant
that's
discrimination.
just that's
Yeah,
just crazy. I mean, banning trans people from anything is wrong. What we
right.
need to do is accommodate and figure out, okay, how are we going to make, and in terms of sports, I mean,
Yeah,
my God, and
but
bathrooms too. I mean, I know I'm a woman. I don't feel threatened by a trans woman at all.
right.
I have met many of them, and they're I don't know. It just doesn't. It's like saying gay men or gay women can't be in a what I mean. Like, what are we afraid of? Can't be in a bathroom with other women or people of the same sex because
Right.
what
Well, they
be
might hit on you or
yeah
something like, well, yeah, you might be in a bathroom with a woman who might hit on you or something. If we're talking about like
yeah.
trans issues with bathrooms
What are
or
we
those
so
things.
afraid of? Oh, well,
Yeah.
let me just divert. And this is a Republican, and I actually sided with him. Okay, so he was a Republican who was in a bathroom, an airport bathroom. I can't remember his name,
Yeah.
and he was hit, or he put his foot in another stall underneath that signaled that he was like wanted to have sex with the other guy. And I'm like, so what? So what? If you don't want to have sex with this guy, just say no. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
interested. Why should you be so offended? And I don't remember exactly,
Right. Right. I
but like,
think,
just say no.
I don't know if this was the case, but like I know that some of these guys who are like Republicans will get caught doing something like that, which I agree. Like that's fine to do
That's
if
fine,
the
except
person,
for if they're
but
phobic.
unless you're trying to make life hell for gay people
Yeah,
because you're in the closet.
yeah. Which I think he was actually come to
Yeah.
think that. So, but in terms of the actual, yeah. Anyway, just this fear of being someone saying, "Hey, would you like to?" or "Hi, how are you?" Flirting
Yeah.
with you. This fear is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what my theory is about that? Is that white men have never been, no one preys on them. I'm a white
Mm,
woman. I've had men prey on me my whole life. I'm used to it. When I say prey, it means you just feel like they want something from you and they could hurt you. Okay. But white
right.
men
Right.
don't have that issue except for
Yeah.
from gay men.
Right.
And so that's why they're so freaked out because they're not used to it at all. And
Yeah.
we've been dealing with that for decades.
I have
Oh,
another theory, and this doesn't apply to everything, but I think that some of these men are like scared that they might like it. Like
mm,
they might have some tendencies that way themselves. Because why would if someone was hitting on like I've been hit on by a lot of gay men. I don't know why. I get hit on more by gay men than I
because
get hit on by women.
you're
Well,
handsome.
thank you. That's really nice of you to say.
You are.
But I wish that would translate to women instead of but yeah, I take it as a compliment because but why would I get threatened by that unless I was like in the closet or something and it made me uncomfortable, like, oh, like, I don't know, like even that would be unacceptable, obviously, to react in an angry or violent way. I think that would be ridiculous. And
No,
obviously there's limits, like you're not going to just allow yourself to be like touched or, whatever, just the same as like women or something. But yeah,
yeah.
anyway. But yeah, so yeah, we diverged a lot there, but
And
I
did you look up that thing we were going to look up while I was rambling?
oh no.
I guess you weren't bored.
No, 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 no. You weren't being earnest. You were being like really honest, and it was great. Not that you're not always honest, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, I do think that the way that we treat anyone who is a minority in our society, they don't have the numbers, will translate. I'm not I wouldn't consider myself an intersectional, but I do think it's telling that if we're suddenly we're okay with mistreating trans people, that it's not far to leap that, yeah, we're mistreating animals, of course. Like, it's just whoever is forgotten, or overlooked in our society just gets it bad. And like you said, like a lot of times it will be white men that get it the best or something, and yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I was trying to bring it back to animals since that's all my focus. But yeah, well, let's talk a bit about, you had mentioned population, like how humans are overpopulated. You talked about that. I see that. And I'll just say, like, I see that most pronounced, like it's obvious we're overpopulated. We're everywhere. Like we're taking all the land from the animals. So like how it always comes up to me is when someone complains about the deer being overpopulated, and I'm always pointing out that it's their land. Like, why are you upset? What's the problem that you see more deer on the road and you have to drive a little more cautiously? Or, that people make up this thing that the deer eat all the vegetation, then they starve to death, like they care about it. It's like there's some hunter talking point. Anyway, well, maybe I should just let you articulate your own views on like how you see humans being overpopulated and what we should do about it. You're not trying to call for the extermination of people, are you?
No, I'm not at all. And in fact, what will exterminate people is if we continue breeding.
Right.
We are. So just to put a little bit of context, when I was born 62, almost 62 years ago, the population was at 3 billion people on the planet. And now
Yeah.
we're 8 billion, which means that we have doubled and more so, 2.5 times we've grown in just 62 years. And that's because population has an exponential effect. When you have more people and they each have babies or couples have babies, then you're going to get more people.
Right.
And which is why, just as a side note, there is a huge pronatalism push, a push for people to have more babies because humans have smaller families now. And people are saying, and I just wrote to NPR yesterday because I was so annoyed at their article, which went on and on about how we're doomed because our population is going down. Actually, what they said, they didn't say that's what if you listen to it, you would think our population was going down. Actually, our population is now going to go from 8 billion to 10 or 11 billion, no doubt.
Right.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But what they think is that it's going to peak at between 10 and 11 billion, which thank God it's going to peak there, because we can't afford to go higher. And in fact, at 8 billion, we're already doing such destruction to the planet and unable to live on the planet's resources.
Right.
So it is true that people are having fewer kids. And that's because, well, one of the reasons is because women have more choices now. They recognize that they could be mothers, but they can also be other things. And so sometimes they choose the other things, or sometimes they choose, well, I'll have fewer kids and I'll do those other things too. So I feel that, no, the earth shouldn't be rid of humans. Although if that happened, okay. But I don't want
Yeah.
any suffering. I don't want anybody
Right.
to suffer.
Right.
And remember, when I turned 50, my goal was to stop the suffering of animals and humans. And I believe that if our population keeps growing and even goes to 10 or 11 billion, a lot of people are going to suffer. And the people who are going to suffer are the poor and the people of color and the people in the Southern Hemisphere. Northern whites Westerners are going to, do okay. Not great,
Right.
but okay.
Yeah.
And so it really distresses me when people infer that people like I, who are calling for smaller families, are maybe racist or something like that, because no, it's the people who are calling for larger families, like the president of Hungary, Viktor Orban, people in Europe, Japan. They want bigger families because they want their people to populate their country and not have immigration of other less, maybe people they don't view as worthy of being in their country. So to me, that is incredibly racist. Japan really doesn't like people coming in from other countries into. They're very xenophobic, and yet they have, they think they have a population problem. I personally, since they import pretty much everything that they that they use, they're on an island. Japan is an island. They are overpopulated now. And so the only reason people think that the world is underpopulated, or, oh my gosh, we're having smaller families, is because of capitalism. Because capitalism needs more consumers and more workers. More workers you have, the cheaper you can hire them.
Right.
And so it's really, and when you read articles about the doomsday that's coming because we're having fewer kids. And by the way, the average number of kids in the world right now is about, I think it's 2.1, which is pretty much replacement value.
Mhm.
But the argument is always, well, we aren't going to have enough kids to take care of the old people and Social Security. And I'm like, that's why you want to have more kids, just to keep scrambling? It's like a Ponzi scheme. We got to keep having more kids so we can take care of those old people that, were born 50, 60 years ago. I'm 60 and I don't consider myself an old person, but you know what I'm saying? And it's a Ponzi scheme because economics is a construct. It is a human construct. And if we wanted to take care of old people, we could without Social Security by cutting our defense budget for one. And we could find the money, or we have a universal minimum wage or something like that. What's not a construct is the water on our planet, the land on our planet, the drought, fires, enough land to live on. That's not something we can just change because we have 11 billion people. There's not going to be more water. In fact, there's going to be less water because of climate change. So to me, it's a math issue that it's pretty clear. And I'm stunned that so many people are thinking, oh my God, we're having fewer kids. It's actually 2.5 kids. And in the 1960s, on average, families have 2.5 kids per couple, which is still over replacement. Replacement is 2.1. This is worldwide. And in 1960, when I was born, we were having 5 kids per couple.
Wow.
So it's a big lowering of the family size, which is great, but we are still growing. We are adding over 200,000 people a day to the planet.
Yeah.
200,000 people a day are being added to the planet.
Yeah.
And yet these stories about, oh my God, we're having a fertility drop. It's horrible. What's going to happen to our GDP? And it's such bullshit because the studies have been done that families with an average 2.1 kids, those countries, those citizens in those countries that have an average of 2.1 do better and are happier and are more productive and are more provided for than countries that have larger families. So it's only because governments, politicians, and rich company owners want to have more kids, and they're brainwashing us all into thinking that it's important. And really, the world was really good at 2 billion, and that is, I'm almost going to be off this rant, okay? Scientists at Cornell University have found that for everyone on the planet to live at a standard of living that is European, not American, because we're too darn wasteful, the world would need to be at 2 billion people if we are not going to basically ruin the planet. So we would need 2 billion people living at a European standard of living, which, by the way, if you've been to Europe, it's a great standard of living. It's just not as wasteful as ours. And then we could live indefinitely and it would be sustainable. But we're not going to be sustainable at 10 or 11 billion.
We're not sustainable now.
We're not thank you. We're not sustainable now. We haven't been sustainable for decades.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Like, it is very cynical. Like, I think JD Vance even is one of these people who's like, don't quote me on that. I feel like he's one of the people who's like, yeah, we need to have more kids. They're even putting
he
incentives.
Definitely is. Quote him. He is one of those people who says we should have more kids, along with Elon Musk,
who has like 1 billion kids.
And the dictators in North Korea and Hungary, and also actually France is freaking out, and because their population is going down. And I'm thinking, wait a second, you're never once talking about nature, clean rivers, quality of life for humans.
Yeah.
talk about humans because that's what really moves humans, unfortunately, not the plight of animals. So you kind of have to talk about. And, my mom is 89. And when she was born, there were 2 billion people on the planet.
Hmm.
Now, there are now 8 billion. When she was born in 1936, the planet was fine. It wasn't terrible. They're all
Yeah,
acting like if we have fewer people, all of a sudden something terrible is going to happen. No,
I know. I don't get it.
it's going
Yeah,
to
if
be better for everybody, especially with AI taking people's jobs, So,
right. Yeah. I
and
mean,
let me just say one more thing. There's one more
yeah,
thing on
yeah.
my mind. Sorry.
No, you're right.
Countries where there is a lot of war and uh, issues with like terrorism and things like the Middle East, they have a very, very large young population who are unable to find jobs and find a sense of purpose with, these groups that fight and this and that. And so if we had young men who had a future, we would have fewer wars. And to give men a future, you got to educate them. You got to have a country that can provide for their people, etc. And you can't have too many people. And that's
Yeah.
what's happening. And these are in a lot of countries with a lot of people. Now,
Yeah.
by the way, I know America is also very jingoistic and we fight wars and all that stuff. So I'm not saying that only those countries, but unemployed young men is a very dangerous thing to have in a
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand why people just want so much different than like you and I for the world. Like it's just interesting. Like if you take a plane flight, just get the window seat, look out the window and look down at the land, you'll see just nothing but grids,
Yeah.
squares,
Yeah.
that's farmland. And yeah, we've taken all the land in that big beautiful bill that they just passed. I think this got taken out. My sister told me, who's got like a, real concern about public lands and stuff, but they were going to mandate the selling of public lands for development uh, and housing. They wanted to give it to developers. Like this beautiful, like, the last nature that we have, so much nature is already gone, and that's animals again. So that's, I don't understand. But let
Well, in
me let
terms of
me
animals, let me say that in terms of mammals on this planet,
yeah,
1/3 of the weight of mammals is human.
yeah,
60% is the animals that we've captured in our way, in factory farms. They're basically for our own use, and
yeah,
4% is wildlife.
yeah,
That is so basically 95% is for human use and 4% is wild.
yeah.
You're
And we
totally
want to increase that.
We want
That's
to
what's going to
increase that.
happen. That,
And we think that we can live happily on that. And
yeah.
I don't think the quality of life will go down immensely and survival is at stake.
So a lot of people in the vegan movement, the animal rights movement, there are a lot of anti-natalists. I've never really taken like a firm position on that because, and here's the reason, like I would prefer to see the population go down. Um, but I also like, and what would you say to this? Like some people have pushed back on like, well, what if like, all it's no vegans are having babies. So like no babies are growing up with the values of like caring about animals and that sort of thing. But I'll tell you the
I've heard
main
that.
thing, the main reason is that I want to ask you this so that you can explain this to my viewers, because I've been doing live streams lately and sometimes like there will be some anti-natalist conversation and somebody will be in my chat who's already had kids and they'll feel put upon. So some people take this like very personally, like when someone's anti-natalist, and I don't think they should. I don't think they should take it personally, but what would be your response to someone who said like how dare you shame me for having kids? Like I wanted to have kids and I
I'm
have
not
kids.
shaming anybody. Actually,
Yeah.
I am not anti-natalist. I think people should have kids, but I think that having fewer than 2 kids is vital for our survival and
Interesting.
your
Okay.
kids' survival.
Okay.
And your kids and survival. It's imperative. So I'm not saying don't have kids. I'm sorry if I put that forth at all. I'm saying that this drive, this push to encourage women to have children is what's going on around the world and in the media super subtly about all the terrible things that are going to happen because we're choosing not to have children or we're having smaller families is dangerous. I believe, and it's so misguided and only focuses on the economic
Yeah. Well, and
ramifications. So,
as you,
yeah, I don't.
uh,
And by the way, that whole thing about, well, if we don't have children, then our values aren't going to get passed down is bullshit. That's why. That's why every country, well, used to be that countries wanted to have more people so they could have more soldiers, and that was a big reason why countries wanted you to have babies, soldiers and workers. Now it's a lot about ideology. Like, we should have more kids because we're the good people. We're going to save the world. We're the educated ones. That's a lot I hear from Americans. We're educated. Well, we're educated, but guess what? We use so many resources, so many more resources than someone from Chad, for example,
right.
that we have to lower our family size even more because of that. And you don't, people that's what I'm saying. And I believe
Yeah.
that the right way to live will come out when people are happy and safe and not stressed. And I believe that people who react in a manner that is violent is from fear and feeling not safe and not good about themselves and their life. And so if we had a world where everybody had something, instead of there being such haves and have-nots, then the world would be a better place. And people would choose to not abuse animals. And it
Yeah.
just, you don't need a lot of people to overcome the meat eaters. You just need to have a message. Eventually it will come out. Change is hard for humans. So the numbers thing is not a good reason to have kids. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to, like I said, I will stand firmly that to have more than 2 kids is not good for the future. And it's terrible for your children. If you care about your children and grandchildren, you wouldn't have so many kids.
And you say this as someone with 2 siblings.
Exactly. And by the way, I loved having siblings. And I
Mhm.
believe, so there will be a loss somewhere. Yes. But there will be a gain in the future too. And I have friends who are singletons, and they don't know anything different.
Yeah.
Remember
Yeah.
that before our generation, several generations ago, you'd have 10 siblings. And maybe when families got smaller down to 5, people were going, oh, you're so deprived because you don't have more siblings. So it's all
Yeah.
relative. But so yes, we might lose something, and there's a joy in having children. I don't have any myself. I'm child free by choice, because of my strong views on population. But I'm not an anti-natalist. I'm amazed at parents. How can they? I mean, how can they do it? It's just amazing to me.
Yeah. You didn't put forward that you're an anti-natalist, by the way. I guess maybe I assumed that. I do think it's funny that you started this by saying that you were writing a letter to the NPR. I'm not going to bore my listeners by rehashing my gripes with NPR for too long, but I'm going to do it for a second because I have, a lot of gripe with NPR. And the main one is really that they don't cover animal ag, like at all, I mean, and I guess you're an NPR listener. Like, have you heard them covering like any of the animal stuff? Now, I will say, like, let me preface this by saying that there are some local stations that we've been able to get coverage
Yes.
from. Shout out to the one in Sonoma County,
Right.
who
And
did
the one
cover
near
the
me
stuff.
also covered something that I can't
yeah.
remember, but I heard it and I was like, woohoo! It was something I was involved in. I was like, wow, how
Oh,
cool.
nice.
So yeah,
But they're few and far between, unfortunately. I feel like NPR should jump on this a lot more, and they'd have like incredible stories to tell. Like, you should be on Fresh Air. You should be like, as nice as it is to have you on my program, you should be on Fresh Air and This American Life and all these programs on NPR telling your story, because your story's fascinating. I don't understand why they're not jumping at the opportunities, because I'm sure you're accessible for it, right? If they invited you on, you'd say yes, right?
of course I would. I would
Yeah.
talk about animals and population. They'd be sick of me. Yeah, believe me,
Yeah.
I've written so many letters, well, mostly about population. So, I mean, you think animals hard? There's nothing cute about overpopulation. So, but at least
Yeah.
animals, you can have cute little baby calves and things. So it's a
Yeah.
tough thing. But yeah, The media.
Yeah, the media is bad.
And by the way, in terms of NPR, I am not at all bothered by the fact that the government is not going to fund NPR or PBS because
I will.
I feel
Yeah.
like I think we should be listener sponsored.
Mhm.
Like let's have the people choose pay, and I don't think the government should be involved. So I wasn't that bothered. I have to
I
say.
will say this, having worked at NPR stations, I feel the same way, but I will say this with some sensitivity because well, for one, I just think we've battled, like, public radio has battled that funding for decades. And I feel like it's not really doing them any favors. Now, one thing that NPR is going to lose and public radio stations are going to lose by a loss in funding are unfortunately kind of, um, at least how it's described to me. And I don't run the numbers, I don't crunch the numbers, but we may lose some of the people who are like just starting out, some of those fresh, you know, new people who are trying to break into journalism, and
And the
some of those,
rural, some of the rural, those
right,
smaller NPR stations.
right.
Yeah.
But that's where the listeners need to step up,
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean,
kind of
and
what I
they,
think, but
yeah, and they will. I just feel like the government funding, and I'm sorry to any of my former NPR colleagues, I just don't. I also wasn't really that upset about it just because I feel like why do we keep fighting this? It's kind of just hurting the brand, honestly, more than anything. Because look, if you viewed NPR, and I've said this, like NPR is not on the left, but sure, a lot of people who work at NPR are, more left-leaning people. So if you're a conservative and you're like, why the fuck is my money going to this thing that's like more liberal? Like, I'd be pissed if
yeah,
like it was going to like Fox News or some shit. I'd be
yeah.
mad.
I
Yeah.
think NPR is more liberal. Well, to me, it's middle of the road, but
Yeah,
I
it
am
is.
very far left. But so
Yeah,
I
same.
see how people would think it was left because, but I remember during the Iraq War, they interviewed a lot of generals. They were they they were very at the beginning, at least, because I was protesting the Iraq War before it started because Bush was mumbling about it
Yeah.
before, and in the very first day I also got arrested. So I got arrested a couple times, and most of America was pro war and pro getting involved because we were so upset about 9/11. Even though Iraq did not bomb us, folks, just by the way, because there's still people who think that it was Iraq who was
Right,
involved
right.
in 9/11,
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
right.
So anyway, NPR was pretty conservative there in and they were, I don't know if it was them. So a lot of them, the media can be guilty of trying to get something too quickly to us, and so they just take the press release from the government and
Yeah.
like show you a picture of the bomb hitting the hospital, and it really wasn't a hospital. It really was something from a totally different war. So
Yeah.
that the White House released. So you have to be really careful with the
Uh,
news.
yeah, and I'll name drop Will Potter again just because this is fresh on my mind since I'm reading his book. But a considerable amount of this book is him sort of struggling with that line of journalism and activism. And in the part that I just read, he speaks my language. This Will, you talked right to me.
Are you
How,
going to
like,
interview him, or have you interviewed him?
I've asked him. I understand he's real busy with his book launch,
Yeah.
but he said, yeah, let's swing back around. So yeah, I'm going to work on getting him on this channel. I'd be really excited, and I can't wait to say this to him to his face, just like how this spoke to me so much, just like him coming to the conclusion that this two-sidedness that we do with everything that is like drilled into our heads, you got to get both sides of every story, is bullshit. Like, sometimes there's right and there's wrong, and you can, as an intelligent person, just make the call. And like, you don't need to give equal weight to somebody, like in the case where I had to do one time where I was just talking to someone who was, not to get back on the trans issue, like the example that I give often is someone who was advocating in favor of like basically discrimination against trans people. And in that moment, I was like, am I going to do this fucking NPR thing where I have to be like, oh, yeah, tell me about that? Or am I going to push back and say, like, actually, you're being shitty? And I, of
But do you
course, I
think,
didn't.
Jeremy, but what you, and of course you did what? Sorry, I interrupted.
Of course, I didn't call her shitty, but so what I,
Oh,
I had this
you
like
didn't
little.
interview her.
I did interview her, and I put it out, but I just remember saying, and it's funny because I listen back to it now, and I'm like, I didn't like it was so I didn't do anything, but at the time, it was very to me, it was very subversive that I was like I had an edge to her tone, and I was pressing her, and I thought I'm going to get in trouble for this interview for the mildest pushback. I didn't, by the way. I didn't get in trouble. But in my head, that was the culture that I lived in. That no, 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 middle of the road. You can't have like any kind of opinion. But what were you gonna say?
Oh, I see what you're saying. But don't you think by even if you hadn't pushed back, well, when you push back, you ask questions so that they have to defend their point of view, and through that, the listener will either hear that it's bullshit
Hmm.
or not. So I feel like it's important to hear, like, I'm not for censorship. Like when the universities were stopping people from talking, giving
Yeah,
speeches and stuff, I kind of felt like, well, wait, maybe those people should talk and everyone
yeah,
should hear it and see what an idiot they are, how stupid they are, how terrible. But then on the other hand, okay, because I was so worried about being easily influenced, I understand how people can be easily influenced when someone's
yeah,
standing up on a stage and they're saying they're only giving you part of the story. So you might, oh, yes, right,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's
So
really hard.
well, so here's the thing, like the way, and I had in my talk with like my first conversation with Wayne on this channel, we discussed this, and I agree with you. Like I'm not for censorship, and that extends to the journalist, to where the journalist I was censoring myself, and I feel like that's dishonest. I'm being dishonest to the listener by playing this middle of the road guy. It's fine, in my opinion, for people to view NPR as liberal and to view me as liberal and having that view. I feel like that would make for a much more honest interview. And it doesn't have to be like a Tucker Carlson shouting match or, so biased. But I just felt like our culture was like really on the side of this cautious approach. And I feel like it
Which
was,
which ended up being like nothing was said kind of thing. You're
yeah.
so
And
cautious that you don't really make people think enough and decide for
yeah. And
themselves.
nothing happens. And I was not okay. And this is like where like the will quote is, and where people like you, I know you understand this. Like I was not okay with just being a journalist. I wanted to change the world. I was
Mhm.
always an activist, always. And I say that like if I were to say that as someone who is currently employed, they probably take me off the air. And
Mhm.
that's ridiculous. I'm an activist. I want the world to be better than the world that I came into and make the world better for people. And that's it. And that should be what journalists are doing. And so many journalists like take the position that by just presenting the information, that is what you're doing. And I agree with that to a point, but there's also just like a dishonesty and a stifling when you are both sidesing an issue. Like sometimes, some issues just aren't like, for instance, like if I was grilling, sorry to go on a rant, if I was grilling the anti-trans person, um, and then I had like some psychologists say, yeah, I asked questions of them talking about, like trans issues and stuff like that. But no, I wasn't grilling him because I trusted him. He was an expert. But I grilled her, and fair enough. Like I think people could see like where I stood on that issue and who I thought was right. And I think that's okay. But I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you can't give the thing is that it's I don't think it's honest for us to be able to give all different points. Like you can't cover all both sides.
Hmm.
It's impossible. So to pretend that you're doing that is not true. Like for the NPR article where I was annoyed because they didn't say that the world population was still going up. All they did was go, birth rates are going down. And one woman said, we're going to have a depopulation. And it's
Yeah.
true. We are, after we reach 11 billion, we're going to, and thank God, because as you mentioned with the deer, What happens to the deer when they overpopulate? They starve. And that's going to happen to humans too. Why are we so different? Then that's nature. We think we can out technologize our fate.
Yeah.
So, but what I think is that viewers come with their own set of biases to everything.
Yeah. Right.
So you try and give as much information as possible. I like having both sides. I don't know, maybe it felt like you were grilling that person. Do you think you would have found ways to grill the psychologist? I mean, were there things that
Well, like I said, even when I look back at this, I'm like, oh, that was fine. It was
Yeah.
nothing. Was literally nothing. Like it's completely fine. But I just remember in the culture that I lived in, that I felt like I was doing something really bad. Like, or not bad. It was true to me.
Right, but
True, but it wasn't completely true to me. Like I said, I stifled myself. And like, if I was like being really true to myself, and I know this is completely unprofessional, you shouldn't do this, but I would have called her a bigot, like a piece of shit bigot, because that's what I thought she was. And I will stand by that. I think that's exactly what she is. Here's the example. Here's a more recent example of NPR. And you mentioned like having the both sides. So they did a story maybe a year ago about a rodeo. Like it was about like rodeo, like for like this Mexican group of Mexicans essentially. And so they framed it all as like this kind of cultural thing. And they talked about how it's so dangerous for the riders, not a mention of the animals. So they talked about people falling, getting hurt, and like, oh, well, we just got to get up and get back at it and do it, not a mention of the animals. So they miss a side that
yeah,
was like the main side for us, obviously. And
yeah.
it's
But
just
most people
amazing.
wouldn't even think about the animals. They
Right.
would.
And it's an amazing blind spot.
You're so right. It's a huge blind spot. And I find that people, I had the rights to Ingrid Newkirk's book, Free the Animals, for quite a while.
You had the rights to it? Amazing.
I was trying to make it into a film with my friend Nick Tyler. And we had I thought was a really good script, but everyone said it was biased. It was too much for the animals. Now, we really tried to make it not, no, they didn't say it was biased. It was maybe, I don't know, they were like, it was preachy or something, but we really tried so hard not to make it preachy. I mean, totally not. This is an action movie, really.
Yeah.
And if you've read Free the Animals, it's about freeing animals, right? And I thought to myself, if this was about maybe the environment or some other issue, people would not feel this way. But because it's about animal rights, people feel preached to right away. They feel like, oh, nope, I'm not going to do it. So, yeah, there's already where it's an uphill climb, as we know, because people benefit so much from exploiting animals. They don't want to remove it from their lives. It's very disruptive to look, even me, my life changed immensely after I went from vegetarian to vegan. I was a different person.
Mm-hmm.
Just from that, just taking that action changed the way I viewed the world.
Right.
And so, and I've been vegetarian for decades for animals, but when I actually really committed and took out dairy and eggs and everything, those are the last two remnants. It was amazing how I changed. So people are resistant to change, though. It's scary. And look, it took me forever. So I have empathy for them, actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's amazing. I had no idea that there was effort to make Free the
Free the Animals.
Free the Animals into a movie.
Oh yeah, well no, it's somebody else has the rights now. Unfortunately, I tried to get them back because I couldn't get it made. I couldn't get it made we had it for a long time. Ingrid was awesome. Okay. Ingrid was amazing. And but I hope to get it back because these folks who have it now haven't been able to get it made either. And they've had it for, I don't know, 5 years now. So
okay. How long has this whole process been going for this?
Well, I think I got it in 2010 was when I think maybe it was around 2010. So we tried to get it made, and somebody else had it before then. Kevin Nealon had it before then. So he's a comedian.
Kevin Nealon. Yeah, I know Kevin Nealon. That's amazing.
We were
What?
not the first people to try and make it into a movie. Yeah.
Is Kevin Nealon an animal rights guy?
He's vegan, as far as I know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
Well, that's amazing. So yeah, I would just really like to see that film come to fruition. I think like I've mentioned that people have mentioned that book to me a lot lately, but for people who don't know, that's the story of how the ALF came to America. And essentially, it's a very interesting story. A former policewoman who goes by Valerie, who's called Valerie in the book, not their real name, I don't believe. Yeah,
no.
went to the UK and got trained by Ronnie Lee and the ALF and brought it back to America. And it's like a very exciting read. It would make an incredible movie. And I think, yeah, like I
The
would
book
hope
is
it would.
based on truth, she says. Ingrid Newkirk, who founded
Mhm.
PETA,
PETA, right?
co-founded PETA.
Yeah, that book was great.
It's inspiring. It's
Yeah,
an
and a
inspiring book.
film would be amazing. So yeah, I hope that project doesn't die because that would be really incredible, especially to see that on a big hot like it would be great if that were like released in theaters and then all of a sudden people knew who the ALF was again and yeah, it was like more broadly known. Because I'll tell
Yes.
you, like it was 5 years into like activism before I even knew like any of that history. I mean, I knew of the Animal Liberation Front, but I hadn't dove into it like in the way that you can dive into it in that book.
Yeah, the Animal Liberation Front was, for people who don't know, an underground organization who did not do open rescues or anything
Hmm.
open. They did cover their faces, and they did not focus on factory farms like a lot of the open rescues of today. They were focused on labs because labs were not as shut down as they are now. Now it's very difficult to get into labs, even though there have been rescues. Of course, we know the Ridgeland trial, right?
Right.
But they focused on laboratories and mink farms, fur farms, things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
were,
And they're not gone.
I still
Like,
support them, by the way. I still get their newsletter, uh,
hmm.
the newsletter from the Animal Liberation Press Office. I think you can get their newsletter. So there
Right.
was recently a mink release just recently in Ohio, I think it
Right.
was.
Yeah.
So
2,000 mink got saved
yeah.
just like a week ago. And the ALF did claim that, by the way, that was put out like yesterday or something. That because before who put out the information was Fur Commission USA. They were the
Oh,
ones who broke the news. Isn't that funny?
is that right? Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, let them. I'm sure they framed it as, the minks are going to die, which is hilarious because they're going to die anyway. But even worse, they're going to be tortured. They're going to be electrocuted up their anus. That's how they kill minks. So they
Yeah.
don't leave in the fur. And yeah, I'm not so sure that the mink. I think the mink can survive
Oh, they
if
can. Yeah.
released because they they still have that wild instinct and they're still young.
Yeah, that's how it's been described to me that even generations of captivity, they haven't lost the wild gene basically. Like so they're still technically wild animals and they can adapt. And according to Jerry Vlasic, who I had on my program, who he runs the press office, he said, like once the mink are released, they disperse for miles, like
Yeah,
very,
'cause
very
their
quickly.
range their
Yeah.
range is large. So hopefully very few are captured. And I know that mink farms were basically farming just for. I'm surprised Trump hasn't like put a huge tariff on mink farms because mostly apparently the fur goes to China. It really
Yeah.
does. People don't buy mink here.
Well, I guess I shouldn't talk about things I don't really know that much about, but I will say I remember seeing like a couple years ago, it was like when COVID was like hot, that I feel like Mitch McConnell like had introduced a bill to ban mink farming, or there was a push in it.
Okay, and I can speak a little bit to that. I don't know if it's about this bill, but I can tell you that there was a lot of conversation about mink because mink were able to get COVID,
Yeah.
and they were worried about mink um, spreading it around to workers, and if they got loose, they would spread it into the wild. There was a
Hmm.
lot of concern about that. So
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, that was the reason that they were given. I mean, it had to do with COVID. So it was like, obviously it wasn't about, oh, we need to protect the animals. It was about like a health risk.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
And why is it that, you had this, like you say, you like support the ALF, but you like really focused on open rescue? What was it about open rescue that drew you, and DXE in particular?
I believe that optically, it's a much more effective way to help animals and the view of animal advocacy and how we should treat them than the ALF, especially after 2001, when we get scared of people, well, in black and wearing masks, although now masks, because of COVID, we're more
Yeah.
comfortable with masks, but the black masks and covering the faces, that brings a lot of fear in people, and it's not good optically. And I remember my brother got really irritated at me because I said, Jonathan, when you guys spray paint, like free the animals, can you make it so that it doesn't like look like helter skelter? And he goes, he goes, we don't have time to stencil it.
That's good.
So he's totally right, but it was a different time then. And so yeah, so that kind of, I also believe that what we're doing, I believe that the way to help animals the most is through the courts. So the more we can go through the courts and change laws, that will be the way we change the way animals are treated, and then thus how people view animals.
Right.
The fact that we can save a dog from a hot car by destroying that car, that human's car, says a lot about how we value dogs.
Hmm.
But so we need to have that also translate to other animals, like um, pigs and goats and cows and chickens.
Yeah. And you sort of already made this point, but there's something very powerful about being just open and proud about what you've done. And the contrast to that is that when you're on trial, it's the companies who are trying to hide things, which is, to me, that's why I'm baffled when juries don't acquit. Like, and I think that partly it's that sometimes they just don't see it, because as we know about trials, so much happens outside of the jury's view. But to me, it's just very telling when one side is trying to keep people from talking, and on the side of the open rescuers, it's like complete openness. We'll talk about anything. Tell us about, and by the way, tell us about your operation, because that
Yeah.
seems to be the thing that nobody wants to talk about in this courtroom, and the judge and everybody that prohibits it.
I think a lot of times it's the restrictions that the judge has put on the defense, us, that we can't talk about a lot of things, and also the charges. So they're not allowed to consider certain things, like the welfare of the animals. That's not relevant. You can only look at whether it was you trespassed. So it starts to get very legal. That's why we have to change the laws.
Yeah.
Because that's how I see it. Now, apparently, juries are allowed to sort of go with their morality also,
Hmm. Hmm.
but that can be very hard with the narrow scope in which they have to decide a verdict. A lot of times, the
Yeah.
judge will say, you cannot take into account this, you cannot take into account that. And
Isn't
that's,
that called nullification? Is that right? I was trying to think of that word the other day. I think that's like, and it's something that's like real taboo. Like, you're not supposed to instruct the jury about jury nullification.
oh, is that
I'm just
right?
learning. Yeah, yeah, because they can just make a decision based on their conscience that has nothing to do with what the judge instructed them to do. And
Mm.
but they're not supposed to know that, apparently, which is
Oh,
kind of funny. Um,
okay. I'll have to look at
yeah.
that. That's important.
Yeah. Well, I thought, I'm pretty naive. Like, the Sonoma trial was my first experience, like pulled in last minute to Wayne's team to help out. And I remember this moment when Louis Bernier was testifying as a witness. And Louis mentioned, like, we were watching the condition 1 video, which was showing the right heart demonstration, the locking of the necks. They wanted the jury to see that. They made us cut the video where any part of the slaughter was taking place. So you didn't get to see what was happening inside. And Lewis just mentioned, it would be nice if the jury could see the rest of this video, and they shut down the court. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is great. They cleared the courtroom. They're going to penalize Lewis. And I thought we win, because like, if I'm a juror and I see very clearly, oh, they're hiding something from me, I'm going to acquit every fucking time. Like, I don't understand why the jury didn't do that. But I guess,
Well, I mean,
they're
I too thought that it was crazy, especially because at Reichardt, which was that, I was there at that action, right? Remember?
yeah.
Wayne had very little to do with that. He so
Yeah.
wanted to distance himself that he asked me to take his place. He did not want to know about things, yet he got accused of conspiracy. I mean, I'm one of the people that he can't be in touch with for 2 years because I'm
Right.
considered a co-conspirator because I was involved with that. And that was, I mean, what were his charges? Do you remember? What was he found guilty on? It was conspiracy and what else?
I think it was like conspiracy to trespass and trespass. And
And he
I
never
believe,
trespassed. Did
and
he
he
ever
was, no, and he was convicted of trespass, even though he stayed outside. And I think if you could argue that he trespassed, like his arm went over the line or something, or like he stood like near it.
I mean, what happened? Why did they that seems to me that it would be really easy. You just say, no, show me where he trespassed.
Exactly. I thought it was that easy too. And maybe it will come out that that will be very beneficial in the appeal, because they're working on an appeal. I don't know where that stands at the moment right now, but there is an appeal going on. And I just thought it was obvious. And to me, and I hate to put this on the jury because they're just average citizens, but I'm just baffled that they came to the conclusions that they came to.
Well, it might
And
have
I
been
feel like,
Sunrise, though. It might have been Sunrise where he did go on property. We all did.
yeah.
We all
No,
did on that property. He didn't hide it, and then he got arrested also for doing a civil disobedience later that
but
day.
I
So
mean, all of it.
But
It was just such an easy
in terms
moment
of
for them.
Reichardt, I mean, he had nothing to do with. He had so little involvement in Reichardt. It's crazy.
Yeah. I know the whole trial was just silly, and I feel like even the prosecutor conceded that point. I thought I'm too optimistic. I just thought it's so obvious. Like, I thought they had not done a good job making a case. I think there was like a ton of pressure on them. I mean, like, I don't know if you remember this, but they deliberated for like more than a week. It was like, I think 6 days of actual deliberation, but that carried over in a weekend. And I think the judge, I don't know this for a fact, but I mean, the judge did encourage them to keep going back and going back, even when they came with more questions and they weren't adequately answered, in my opinion. And that was just like a hell of an experience. Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah.
Which is, one of the amazing things. Like, one of the things about the trial, I will say, is that it is kind of an amazing moment of coming together for activists. Like, they're powerful experiences. I know Wayne will say this, that even though he did jail time, like, some of these trials have been like some of the great experiences of his life. Yeah.
I'm going to go to Zoe's trial for sure.
Yeah, I'm planning to.
Her. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'll see you there.
Yeah. And and Zoe, for those of you who don't know, I think most of you are going to know Zoe, but Zoe's this amazing person. Started an animal sanctuary at the age of 11. She's been on my program, by the way. Just go check out our conversation. But just an amazing, like, I was talking with Zoe the other day, and she's just so silly. She's laughing and stuff. Just always like, I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I hope nobody takes this, but to me, like, Zoe's like very childlike. She's like a child to me. I know she's a grown woman, so I don't mean that diminutively.
Well, she's only 22, so she's
22.
young. She's been an activist, So the fact that she's got such strength and conviction, and she's really no match for those prosecutors, no matter what happens at the end of the trial, because they're terrified of her. That's why they said they weren't ready to go to trial. A woman who rescued 4 chickens, is it, or something? They aren't ready after over like a year. She's had this ankle thing on and
Yeah.
they're not ready and they want to move it. No, they're just terrified of her and the activists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. Hopefully it will go to trial in September and they won't try and push it again or drop charges, because she doesn't want the charges dropped. And so I support her in that.
Yeah.
She's
And I,
the same mind as I in terms of going to court is very important for the animals.
And I remember you saying this about your trial, how you mentioned there was a woman who said, I work at Walmart and we don't go after the shoplifters for under $40. And I was thinking at that time, like, yeah, surely they have like, chicken that, doesn't get sold that they just toss, right? I'm sure that's happening all the time. So like the value of like the monetary value of the damage to the company, like is so absurdly low for them to be going after these charges. Now, of course, they know like they're on trial. Like I'm amazed that they bring these charges, but
we're happy they
know.
do. We're happy they do, because we want them to eventually, the laws will move forward.
Yeah, exactly. And even with setbacks, like I don't know if it is a setback when you don't get allowed the necessity defense, but eventually the dam's going to break.
Yeah,
there's going to be a judge someday that's going to answer the call of history. And I'm so I shouldn't say this about a judge, especially when my friends on the line. I'm just so disappointed when judges don't answer the call of history. It's just such a privileged place to be in. I wish I would have that moment.
It was interesting because the judge, in our case, argued against the defense. He didn't allow the necessity defense, and he said it's because he didn't consider chickens. I don't remember if it was people or individuals, whatever the line was. He didn't consider chickens the same value as whatever. I don't think it said humans.
Yeah.
Because we do it with dogs, right? We can do it with dogs, but somehow chickens weren't dogs. So it's just going to be a little leap and someone will go, wait a second, we can do this with dogs. How come we can't do it with chickens? So it's going to happen. The more we push, the more these stories. Zoe's gotten some great press. She's a very sympathetic defendant. So yeah.
I'm hopeful. I mean, Zoe's a very strong person. So I feel bad that she's going through the situation that she's going through, but I know it's for the greater cause.
Oh yeah. No, she's happy about it.
Yeah.
She could have taken many deals, but she didn't. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we've gone kind of long and I don't want to take too much of your time. I always do like to ask, like, what are you reading these days, or what are some books that have inspired you? We've already talked about a lot of books, and I think it's interesting. A lot of the people who have come into the movement like from a time before me often got into it from books and stuff. And I feel like we're losing that. So
well, they get into it from videos like Dominion and Forks Over Knives. And, because sometimes veganism can be the gateway to being an animal activist.
Right.
It doesn't have to be but I'm actually reading a book called Butterfly Economics now, which is only because my other books on my Kindle, my library, they went. So I ordered something. I like behavioral economics. So I put in behavioral economics and it came up and I started reading it. And it's interesting about.
Oh, nice.
So why people do what they do. I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
But my next book will be Little Red Barns by Will Potter.
Yeah.
So I have it. I bought it, and I have it, and I want to crack it.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, reading Green is the New Red, I'm very excited for this new book because he's a great writer. It's great storytelling. It really reads. There are some books that I get bogged down in. This is not one of those books. It really reads like very in an exciting pace and everything. Well, Alexandra, it's been so nice having you on the channel. And you're always welcome back if you ever want to come on and talk about something. You ever want to tell us how we need to like get rid of all the humans? Like just
it's not about that.
No,
it's not about that. I want people to have smaller families. Just
exactly.
That's all. They can have kids, and I want them to choose. By the way, okay. You opened it up. So,
I did it. I'm okay.
I want to be clear that the best way, and works probably for all issues, is the best way to lower our population is to have people choose. That forcing people to have smaller families doesn't work at all. You can't change hearts and minds with bombs or with, forcing. So I don't believe in that at all. So my goal is just to encourage people to look at the upside of having smaller families, of which there is a lot, many upsides. And it's just that our culture doesn't emphasize those, because our culture for eons, any species has to reproduce to survive. And so the canonization of having large families has happened all the time. I mean, it's all they talk about is how great it is to have babies. And we have to look at it differently and start, restricting this natural urge to have babies. And it's not natural for us, but there's so many upsides for future generations.
Well, and you pointed out that, this push to have more babies, well, ultimately, like, kind of limit choice for women, perhaps, if women feel pressured to do this. Like you mentioned, like, a lot of the reason why people are having less babies is because women have choice to pursue career or whatever. They don't have to stay at home and be the traditional wife, like, they can do whatever they want. So,
well, ironically, is the men who, see, now you've got me on this. We could have spent 2 hours just talking about this issue. Ironically, the men like JD Vance and Elon Musk, who want so many babies, it's interesting, because if you ask men how many babies they want around the world and versus women, men always want more. Why? Because they don't spend as much time rearing the kids. They don't spend as much time. They're not restricted in their careers when they have children, but women are. And the reason women in South Korea are having so few kids, they have like 0.6 kids per couple or something. It's very low, is because men do not help women when it comes to rearing the child at all. So men have to step up. If you guys want to have more babies, then step up. But frankly, I think it's better for us to just keep it at 2 kids or fewer per couple, or none per couple. And that will help future generations of people and animals.
Yeah, I just hope that the population decreases, because I just think we're at a level right now, like, as we pointed out, that we're just unsustainable. Like, it's just insanely. I'm not saying I wish harm to anybody.
No, people are trying to avoid suffering. I'm saying
exactly.
We have fewer kids by choice.
Yeah, I was just clarifying for me.
Famine or war or anything.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like, what I said. I just want to be clear. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But yeah, it was more like this, like, just choosing
to have smaller families. Exactly.
Right.
It's just the most beautiful thing, and it's the most democratic and humanistic and everything. So, but that'll be another show, Jeremy. I will come on and talk just about population to you, but I don't know.
Okay.
Animals your focus, so that probably couldn't work. And Wayne, by the way, he just rolls his eyes at me. He is not convinced.
Oh, I know. The 2-year period is going to end soon, so you can go on Wayne's program, and Wayne's over there trying to talk about how he wants to have kids. So get on him.
Well, he can have kids. He can have kids.
But just tell him not too many. We don't need. We can have a few more Waynes in this world. Honestly, the world.
He can have 2 kids, and then
Wayne.
2 or fewer, and then he can just get on his, talking tour and be in the courtrooms and influence people like that, and his podcasts and his social media. He doesn't have to have children to impart. You don't really know if your children are going to take your values. I didn't take my dad's values. So it's total baloney that, like, we should have kids because we're the right kind of people to have kids. Bullshit. The way you get,
they may rebel against you.
Yeah, exactly. The way you get good values is having them, like I said, being raised in a society that is loving and accepting and feels safe, and doesn't have a lot of fear.
Well, I'll make sure that Wayne knows that 2 is the max for him. I'll let him know.
He knows because I told him. He rolls his eyes, but let's see. Maybe Rose will keep him in check.
Yeah, I don't think like the story that I hear the latest is she doesn't want to have kids, and Wayne has to try to convince her. That's what
Of
he told.
course.
That's what he
Because
said on his podcast.
oh, okay. So yeah, of course. I'm not
Of
surprised. That
course.
often happens.
It's such a patriarchal view, Wayne. Like, yeah, because he's going to let Rose do all the work. That's what
He's
that's
gonna,
what Wayne's planning.
I mean, he's going to try and raise them well, but then, he'll be called off to, somewhere to give a talk or somewhere here and this and that. And
Yeah.
it'll be just accepted that it's okay for him to go. But the woman, it's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, all right. Well, we're wrapping up.
Well, that
I
was so
love
much
Wayne.
fun. That I could talk to you for like 4 hours, like
Me
I'm
too,
sure,
Jeremy.
like many hours. But yeah, I don't think people listen to podcasts that are too super long, so we should wrap it.
No,
But yes,
all right.
anytime you want to talk about anything, it's a small channel, but anytime you want to come on, just invite yourself and I'll invite you back, of course.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's so nice to speak with you today.
You too. Take care, Alexandra.